They tried to bury this, not metaphorically, but systematically. An ancient Tibetan breathing method capable of generating internal heat in freezing conditions, strengthening the immune system beyond normal thresholds, and unlocking a level of bodily control that modern science is only beginning to understand. And yet it was labeled as ritual, dismissed as mysticism, and quietly pushed into obscurity. Why? Because once you understand what this does to your biology, you stop being dependent, you stop being fragile, you stop being predictable, and that is dangerous. Right now, your body's underperforming. You feel it even if you can't articulate it. Your energy fluctuates, your focus collapses under stress, your immune system reacts slowly, sometimes too late. You blame sleep, diet, and stress, but those are surface-level excuses. The real issue runs deeper. Your nervous system is locked in a reactive loop, constantly pulled outward, never anchored inward. You are breathing, but you are not using breath. There is a difference, and it changes everything. Here is where the hidden mechanism begins to surface. Inside your body lies a regulatory network that controls heart rate, inflammation, digestion, emotional stability, and everything else. Modern science calls it the vagus nerve. Think of it as a command cable between your brain and your organs, constantly sending signals that determine whether you are in survival mode or recovery mode. Most people have almost no conscious access to it, but vase breathing changes that. This is not relaxation breathing. This is not meditation for calmness. This is controlled internal pressure combined with breath retention that forces your system into a state it rarely enters naturally. When done correctly, it compresses the abdomen, stabilizes the diaphragm, and creates a subtle but powerful internal tension. Like sealing energy inside a vessel. That is why it is called vase. You become the container, and inside that container, something begins to build. Heat, pressure, activation. Ancient practitioners described it as igniting an inner fire. Modern physiology translates it differently. Altered carbon dioxide tolerance, increased oxygen efficiency, and direct stimulation of autonomic pathways that most people never touch. Different language, same phenomenon. The moment you begin to control this, you are no longer just breathing. You are intervening in your own biology. So the question becomes uncomfortable. If your body has this capability, why were you never taught it? Why does something so fundamental feel so unfamiliar? And more importantly, what else have you been missing this entire time? Here is the part no one tells you because it exposes just how compromised your system has become. Your body is not weak by design. It has been conditioned into weakness. Constant stimulation, artificial environments, shallow breathing patterns, and chronic stress have pushed your physiology into a narrow operating range. Your metabolic fire is low, your cellular energy output is inconsistent, and your immune system is reactive instead of proactive. You are surviving, not adapting. And the most dangerous part, it feels normal. Now imagine this differently. Inside your body exists a dormant furnace, a system specifically designed to generate heat, regulate energy, and defend you against environmental stress. Modern science calls part of this system brown adipose tissue. Unlike regular fat, this tissue doesn't store energy. It burns it to produce heat. It is highly active in infants, which is why they can regulate temperature more efficiently, but in adults, it becomes underutilized, almost silent. Not gone, just inactive. Waiting. Vase breathing directly interferes with this dormancy. When you compress the abdomen, retain the breath, and increase internal pressure, you are not just holding air. You are shifting gas exchange at a cellular level. Carbon dioxide begins to rise slightly, and this is where most people panic. They think oxygen is everything. It is not. Carbon dioxide is the key regulator that tells your body how to release oxygen into tissues, increase your tolerance to it, and suddenly oxygen delivery becomes more efficient. Your cells wake up. Your mitochondria, the microscopic engines inside your cells, start producing energy with greater intensity. Think of it like this. Your body is an engine that has been idling for years. Vase breathing presses the accelerator, but not in a chaotic way. In a controlled, contained ignition, the internal pressure acts like a signal, telling your system, adapt or fall behind, and your body, when given the correct stimulus, always chooses adaptation. Heat begins to build, not from external sources, but from within. Subtle at first, then undeniable. And here is the part that should concern you. If this mechanism exists, and if it can be activated through something as simple and as precise as breath control, then why is it not standard knowledge? Why are you taught to manage symptoms instead of activating systems? The answer is uncomfortable because it implies that your current limitations are not fixed. They are trained. Once you understand this, you cannot go back to unconscious breathing, because now you know every breath is either reinforcing weakness or building resilience, and vase breathing is not neutral. It forces a decision inside your biology: adapt or remain dormant. Now we move into the part that was never meant to be simplified, because precision is what separates activation from illusion. Most people will try this once, casually, without structure, and feel nothing. Then they dismiss it. That is the mistake. Vase breathing is not forgiving. It demands exactness. Small deviations and the entire mechanism collapses. But when you align every element correctly, something shifts immediately. Not dramatic, not explosive, but unmistakable. You begin with posture. And this is where most people already fail. Your spine must be upright, not rigid, but stacked. Each vertebra aligned so the diaphragm can move without obstruction. Shoulders relaxed, chin slightly tucked, gaze steady. Why? Because your nervous system reads posture as a signal. Collapse your posture and your body assumes weakness. Align it and you prepare for control. You are not just sitting, you are setting the conditions for internal pressure to build correctly. Now the breath. You inhale slowly through the nose, but not into the chest. That is surface breathing. You direct the air downward, expanding the lower abdomen first, then the sides, then the lower back. This is full diaphragmatic expansion. Your torso becomes cylindrical, like a vessel filling from the bottom up. And here's the critical detail. You do not over-inhale. Too much air creates instability. You stop just before the urge to gasp. Control, not excess. Then comes the seal, the defining element of vase breathing. You gently contract the pelvic floor, the lower abdomen, and the area just below the navel. Not forcefully, not aggressively. Controlled tension, as if you are containing pressure inside your core. This is what ancient practitioners described as holding the vase. You are creating a closed system. Energy in, nothing escaping. Now you hold the breath. This is where the internal shift begins. Carbon dioxide rises, your diaphragm stabilizes. The pressure you created starts interacting with your nervous system. At first, your body will resist. You will feel the urge to release, to break the pattern. That is your conditioning pushing back. Stay within control. Do not strain, but do not escape too early. There is a threshold, and just beyond it, something changes. You may feel warmth in the abdomen, a subtle expansion, almost like heat spreading outward. This is not imagination. This is activation. Blood flow shifts. Your internal environment is being altered in real time, but only if you maintain the structure. Lose the abdominal seal and the pressure dissipates. Break posture and the signal weakens. Rush the breath and the system resets. After the hold, you release slowly through the nose, maintaining partial tension in the core. Do not collapse. Do not exhale passively. You are controlling the descent just as you controlled the rise. Then you repeat cycle after cycle, each one reinforcing the signal deeper into your system. This is where most people underestimate the process. They think the power is in a single breath. It is not. It is in repetition under precision. Each cycle is like striking a match. One does little, but repeated controlled ignition builds something sustained, something cumulative, something that does not fade when you stop. So understand this clearly. You are not practicing breathing. You are training your body to operate under pressure, to regulate itself beyond unconscious patterns. And once your system learns this, it does not forget. It adapts permanently. What you are about to understand is the layer most people never reach because it forces you to confront something unsettling. Your body is not just mechanical, it is programmable. And vase breathing is not simply a physical exercise. It is a direct interface with your control systems. Systems that operate beneath thought, beneath awareness. beneath what you believe you can influence. Yet here you are, interfering with them in real time. At the center of this lies the autonomic nervous system, the system responsible for deciding whether you are in survival mode or recovery mode. Most people swing uncontrollably between the two. Stress pushes them into sympathetic dominance, elevated heart rate, shallow breathing, inflammation rising quietly in the background. Then they crash into fatigue, but never fully recover. It becomes a loop, a narrow, inefficient cycle that drains energy and weakens resilience. Vase breathing disrupts that loop with force. When you create internal pressure and hold the breath under control, you are sending a signal that confuses the system in a very specific way. The body detects stress because of the breath retention and rising carbon dioxide, but at the same time, it detects control. This dual signal is rare. It forces the nervous system to recalibrate instead of react. You are essentially teaching it a new pattern. Stress without panic, pressure without collapse. And then something else happens. Nitric oxide production begins to increase subtly within the nasal passages and circulatory system. This molecule is not just a chemical, it is a regulator of blood flow, oxygen delivery, and even immune response. With each controlled breath, you are enhancing circulation at a micro level, allowing oxygen to penetrate deeper into tissues that are usually undersupplied. Your body becomes more efficient, not by adding more oxygen, but by using what it already has more intelligently. But the deeper shift is neurological. As you repeat these cycles, brain activity begins to slow from chaotic high-frequency patterns into more stable rhythms. Not sleep, not unconsciousness, something in between. A state where focus sharpens while internal noise decreases. You are still aware, but less reactive. This is where control begins to solidify, because once your brain stops overreacting, your body follows. Now ask yourself this. If your nervous system can be trained to remain stable under internal stress, what happens when external stress appears? Deadlines, conflict, pressure, uncertainty. Situations that normally trigger anxiety now meet a system that has already practiced control under pressure. The reaction changes. The outcome changes. This is why vase breathing was never just about heat or endurance. Those are side effects. The real function is recalibration. You are rewriting how your body interprets stress, how it distributes energy, and how it protects itself. And once that recalibration takes hold, it begins to influence everything. Your focus, your recovery, your resistance to illness, even the way you perceive discomfort. So, understand the implication. You are no longer passively experiencing your nervous system. You are training it directly, repeatedly, and the more precise your practice, the deeper this control embeds itself. At that point, the question is no longer whether this works. The question is how far you are willing to go with it. Now comes the part most people are not prepared for, because it forces you to measure change in a way that cannot be ignored. Vase breathing is not a vague spiritual promise. It produces effects on a timeline, and once you begin, your body starts responding faster than you expect. The first shift happens immediately, often within the very first controlled cycles. A subtle warmth appears in the abdomen, then spreads outward. Your hands may feel different. Your face may flush slightly. This is not imagination. This is your internal thermoregulation system activating, something that has likely been dormant for years. Within the first 2 to 3 days of consistent practice, another change emerges. Your focus sharpens, not dramatically, but noticeably. You react less impulsively. Your breathing outside of practice becomes slower without effort. This is the early sign that your nervous system is beginning to adapt. The background noise in your mind reduces, and in its place, a more stable baseline appears. You may not even recognize it at first, but you will feel the difference when stress appears and your reaction is no longer automatic. By the end of the first week, your body starts to recalibrate its energy distribution. You may notice that you are less sensitive to cold or that your recovery after fatigue improves. This is where the activation of brown adipose tissue becomes more relevant. Your body is no longer conserving energy in the same passive way. It is learning to generate and regulate it dynamically. Heat is no longer dependent on the environment. It is produced internally on demand through a system you are now training deliberately. After 2 to 3 weeks, the deeper effects begin to stabilize. Your immune response becomes more efficient, not in a way you can directly see, but in what you no longer experience. Fewer minor illnesses, faster recovery, a sense that your body is handling stressors before they escalate. This is where most people become uneasy, because this change feels almost unnatural. Not because it is artificial, but because it is unfamiliar. You are accessing a level of regulation that modern habits have suppressed. And then comes the long-term shift. After a month or more of precise, consistent practice, your baseline changes, not temporarily, but structurally. Your breathing pattern, your stress response, your internal heat regulation, all of it begins to operate differently, even when you are not consciously practicing. This is the point where Vase breathing stops being an exercise and becomes a trait, something embedded into your system. But here is the part you need to hear clearly. This timeline is not guaranteed. It is conditional. Precision determines outcome. If you rush, if you lose the abdominal seal, if you treat this casually, your body will not respond the same way. It will not adapt to inconsistency. It responds to clear, repeated signals. So the real question is not whether the transformation is possible. It is whether you are disciplined enough to trigger it. Because once it begins, there is no confusion. You will feel it. You will know. And at that point, continuing is no longer a matter of belief. It becomes a matter of choice. Now you are standing at the edge of something most people will never even realize exists. And this is where I stop explaining and start warning you. Because Vase breathing is not just powerful, it is selective. It does not respond to curiosity. It does not reward half effort. It exposes you. Every inconsistency, every lapse in control, every moment you try to fake precision, your body will reflect it back immediately. That is why this method was never widely taught. Not because it doesn't work, but because it demands a level of discipline most people avoid. You now understand the mechanism. You know how internal pressure, breath retention, and controlled tension interact with your nervous system. You know that you can influence the vagus nerve, recalibrate your autonomic nervous system, and activate systems like brown adipose tissue that most people leave dormant for life. So the illusion is gone. You cannot claim ignorance anymore. The only thing left is action or avoidance. Here is the uncomfortable truth. If you walk away from this now, nothing changes. Your breathing stays shallow, your system stays reactive, your energy remains inconsistent, and over time, that baseline becomes your limit. Not because your body lacks potential, but because you chose not to activate it. That is how most people live, within boundaries they never question. But if you commit, even for a short period, 7 days controlled, precise, intentional, you will feel the shift. And once you feel it, something irreversible happens. You realize your body's not fixed. It is trainable, adaptable, and responsive to signals you can generate at will. That realization alone changes how you approach everything. Stress, fatigue, even discomfort. Because now you know you have leverage. So here is the challenge, and there is no softer way to present it. For the next 7 days, you execute the protocol exactly as described. No shortcuts, no improvisation. You maintain posture, control the breath, hold the internal pressure, and repeat with consistency. You observe what changes, not what you hope for, but what actually happens. Sensations, focus, resilience. You track it like an experiment because that is what this is, a direct intervention into your own biology. And if nothing happens, then you have your answer. But if it does, and it will if you do it correctly, then you are faced with a different problem. You can no longer pretend you are limited. You can no longer ignore what your body is capable of becoming. This is where most people hesitate, not at the beginning, but after the first real result, because progress creates responsibility, and responsibility demands continuation. So, decide carefully. Stay where you are, operating below capacity, or step into something that requires precision, discipline, and awareness, but gives you control in return. There is no middle ground here. You either activate the system or you don't. The method is in your hands now. The outcome is not a mystery anymore. The only variable left is you. If this exploration of the body's hidden potential has changed the way you view your own biology, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the ancient physiological secrets that have been pushed into the shadows. Take control of your internal fire. The next key to your evolution will be revealed soon.